She thought she was planning the perfect anniversary surprise. Instead, she uncovered the most devastating betrayal imaginable. How does a man maintain 8 different relationships, father 13 children, and steal hundreds of thousands of dollars, all while his wife thinks he's a CIA agent? What you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about the person sleeping next to you. This is the story of a woman who discovered that her 10-year marriage was built on a foundation of lies so elaborate, so carefully constructed, that it would take investigators across multiple states to unravel the truth. And here's what makes this case even more chilling. The man at the center of it all is still out there, potentially targeting new victims as we speak. Meet Rebecca Johnson, a 34-year-old financial advisor from suburban Denver, Colorado. By all appearances, she had it all: a successful career, a beautiful home, and what seemed like the perfect marriage to her husband of 10 years, Michael Thompson. At least, that's what she thought his name was. Rebecca met Michael in 2012 through an online dating site. From their very first conversation, he seemed different from other men she'd encountered. He was articulate, well-traveled, and had fascinating stories about his work. There was just one catch: he couldn't talk much about his job because, he explained, he worked as a contractor for the Central Intelligence Agency. "I know it sounds like something out of a movie," Michael had told her on their third date, "but I really can't discuss the details. It's classified." For most people, this might have been a red flag. But Michael was convincing. He had the credentials to back up his story: official-looking identification badges, government email addresses, and he received calls at all hours from what appeared to be federal contacts. When he traveled, which was frequently, he would send photos from locations that matched up with international news events. What would you have done in Rebecca's position? When someone shows you what appears to be legitimate government identification and has explanations for their secretive behavior, how do you question that without seeming paranoid? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because Rebecca's trust in these details would cost her everything. Michael's work required him to travel extensively, sometimes disappearing for weeks at a time on what he called classified operations. He would return with gifts from exotic locations and stories he could only partially share. During his absences, Rebecca would receive carefully crafted emails from his supervisors explaining delays and mission extensions. Their life together seemed idyllic. They celebrated anniversaries, planned for the future, and Michael was an attentive, loving husband when he was home. Rebecca's friends and family adored him. He remembered birthdays, brought thoughtful gifts, and could discuss everything from international politics to local sports teams with equal expertise. But here's what Rebecca didn't know: every single business trip Michael took was actually time spent with other families. Families where he was also the devoted husband and father. Families who knew him by different names and believed completely different stories about his work and his past. As their 10th wedding anniversary approached in March 2022, Rebecca decided to plan something special. She wanted to surprise Michael with a romantic getaway to Virginia, near where he claimed his CIA office was located. She had saved money for months and wanted to book a weekend at a luxury resort where they could finally spend uninterrupted time together. That's when everything began to unravel. Rebecca spent weeks researching the perfect location. She wanted to surprise Michael by booking something near his workplace so he wouldn't have to worry about travel time or work obligations. She even thought she might finally get to see where he worked, or at least the general area. She called the main CIA number in Langley, Virginia, hoping to leave a message for Michael about her surprise visit. She wasn't trying to access classified information. She just wanted to coordinate timing so their romantic weekend wouldn't conflict with his work schedule. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes, but it destroyed Rebecca's world. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said after checking multiple databases, "but we have no record of anyone by that name working here or as a contractor. Are you sure you have the right agency?" Rebecca hung up, her hands shaking. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Michael worked for a different department. Maybe his name was listed differently for security reasons. She spent the next hour calling every government office she could find, each conversation ending the same way: no one had ever heard of Michael Thompson. Now, imagine being in Rebecca's position. You've just discovered that your husband's entire career, the foundation of your relationship, appears to be a lie. What would be your next move? Would you confront him immediately, or would you dig deeper first? Think about it, because Rebecca's next decision would reveal a truth so shocking that it made national news. That evening, while Michael was supposedly on a classified mission in Eastern Europe, Rebecca did something she had never done before. She went through his personal belongings with a critical eye. What she found in his home office would haunt her forever. Hidden behind family photos were credit card statements for accounts she had never seen. Withdrawals for thousands of dollars labeled with coded references to Operation Blackwater and Asset Recovery Mission. But the most devastating discovery came when she found a phone he had left behind. A phone filled with photos of Michael with another woman and 2 children who looked exactly like him. The photos weren't old. They were recent. Very recent. In fact, some had been taken during the same weekend that Michael had told Rebecca he was overseas. Rebecca's discovery of the hidden phone opened a floodgate of evidence that revealed the true scope of Michael's deception. The device contained thousands of text messages, emails, and photos that painted a picture of a man living multiple lives simultaneously. The text messages were perhaps the most damaging evidence. Rebecca found loving exchanges between Michael and a woman named Jennifer, who addressed him as her husband and referred to their 2 children. But here's what made Rebecca's blood run cold. Jennifer was asking Michael about his CIA work and expressing concern about his dangerous missions overseas. Michael was using the exact same cover story with both women. As Rebecca scrolled through the messages, she discovered that Michael's pattern of deception was far more sophisticated than she had initially realized. He maintained separate email accounts for each identity, complete with fake CIA supervisors who would send official-looking communications about mission assignments and security clearances. The technical sophistication of these fake documents was remarkable. Michael had created authentic-looking government letterheads, official signatures, and even fake emergency contact numbers. When either wife called these numbers, they would reach voicemail systems with professional greetings claiming to be various CIA departments. But the most chilling discovery came when Rebecca found Michael's scheduling system. He had a detailed calendar that tracked which wife he was supposed to be with, which children's events he needed to attend, and which cover stories he was using with each family. Some weeks, he would tell Rebecca he was overseas while actually spending time with Jennifer and their children just 2 states away. How many lies do you think one person can keep track of? As Rebecca would soon discover, Michael's web of deception extended far beyond just 2 families. But first, let me ask you this. If you were in Rebecca's position, would you have confronted Michael immediately, or would you have gathered more evidence first? Your answer might surprise you when you hear what Rebecca did next. Rebecca made a decision that would ultimately save other women from Michael's manipulation. Instead of confronting him immediately, she decided to investigate further. She began by looking up the address where the mysterious photos were taken, an address that led her to Jennifer's social media profiles. What Rebecca found on Jennifer's Facebook and Instagram accounts left her speechless. Photo after photo of Michael, at family barbecues, school events, and intimate family moments. Jennifer's posts painted the picture of a loving husband and father who was devoted to his family despite his dangerous government work. The timeline of photos revealed that Michael had been living with Jennifer's family for at least 7 years, 3 years longer than he had known Rebecca. This meant that when Michael proposed to Rebecca, he was already married to Jennifer. When they had their wedding ceremony, he was committing bigamy. But as shocking as this discovery was, it was only the beginning. Rebecca's investigation led her to create fake social media accounts to dig deeper into Michael's network. What she uncovered was a criminal operation so vast and well organized that federal investigators would later describe it as one of the most sophisticated cases of identity fraud and bigamy they had ever encountered. Through careful investigation of Michael's social media connections and the metadata from photos on his devices, Rebecca identified at least 6 other women who appeared to be in romantic relationships with Michael. Each woman lived in a different state. Each woman knew Michael by a slightly different name. And each woman believed she was his only wife. There was Amanda in Florida, who knew him as Marcus Thompson and believed he was a Navy SEAL on classified missions. There was Nicole in Texas, who knew him as David Michael and thought he was an FBI agent working undercover operations. In California, a woman named Lisa knew him as Michael Davis and believed he was a CIA operative specializing in international terrorism. The pattern was always the same. Michael would meet these women through online dating sites, present himself as a dedicated government agent with a dangerous but patriotic job, and slowly build relationships based on carefully crafted lies about his work and background. Each woman was told that his work required absolute secrecy and frequent travel, which explained his absences. But here's what makes this case even more disturbing. Michael didn't just steal these women's hearts. He systematically drained their bank accounts through elaborate schemes involving fake government emergencies. Think about this for a moment. How does one man convince multiple intelligent, successful women to not only marry him but also give him access to their life savings? The answer lies in Michael's understanding of psychological manipulation and his ability to create artificial urgency around fake crises. Each wife received similar requests for emergency funding. Michael would claim that his CIA operations had been compromised, that fellow agents had been captured, or that he needed immediate funds to secure the release of American hostages. The requests always came with official-looking documentation and fake news reports that Michael had created to support his stories. Amanda in Florida wired $85,000 over 2 years, believing she was helping to fund rescue operations for captured American soldiers. Nicole in Texas provided $67,000 for what Michael claimed were emergency extractions of CIA assets from hostile territories. Lisa in California sent $92,000 to help fund a fake operation to recover stolen government secrets. When Rebecca tallied up the financial damage across all of Michael's victims, the total exceeded $500,000. But the emotional damage was far worse. Rebecca's discovery of Michael's other victims led her to make one of the most difficult decisions of her life. In April 2022, she reached out to Jennifer through a fake social media account, pretending to be a friend who had information about her husband's work. The conversation that followed lasted over 4 hours and destroyed 2 women's understanding of their entire adult lives. "Are you sitting down?" Rebecca had typed. "Because what I'm about to tell you about your husband Michael is going to change everything." Jennifer's initial reaction was denial, then anger, then devastating realization as Rebecca shared photo after photo of Michael with other women. The evidence was overwhelming. Not only was Michael married to multiple women, but he had been stealing from all of them using the same fake CIA stories. What happened next demonstrates the incredible strength and intelligence of Michael's victims. Instead of turning against each other, Rebecca and Jennifer decided to work together to expose Michael's crimes and find his other victims. They created a private Facebook group called Michael Thompson Victims Network and began systematically documenting evidence. They shared financial records, photos, emails, and testimonies that painted a complete picture of Michael's criminal operation. One by one, other victims joined the group. Amanda from Florida, who had been questioning why Michael's missions seemed to always require more funding. Nicole from Texas, who had become suspicious when Michael claimed to be overseas but his phone's location services showed him in the United States. Lisa from California, who had started noticing inconsistencies in Michael's stories about his childhood and family background. Each woman brought pieces of the puzzle that helped complete the picture of Michael's deception. They discovered that he had been running this operation for over a decade, with some relationships dating back to 2010. They found evidence of at least 13 children across his various families. Children who had no idea their father was living multiple lives. The psychological impact on these children would prove to be one of the most heartbreaking aspects of the case. Some children had never met their half-siblings. Others had been told that their father worked for the government and couldn't discuss his job for security reasons. When the truth came out, many of these children struggled to understand why their father had lied about everything, including his love for them. But here's what makes these women's response even more remarkable. They didn't just want justice for themselves. They wanted to prevent Michael from victimizing other women. The evidence gathered by Michael's victims was so comprehensive that when they approached law enforcement in May 2022, investigators were able to immediately begin building a federal case. The crimes crossed state lines, involved mail fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and bigamy, all federal offenses. FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez, who led the investigation, later described the victims' documentation as some of the most thorough evidence collection she had ever seen from civilians. "These women essentially did our job for us," Rodriguez said. They had financial records, communication logs, photographic evidence, and documented timelines that clearly showed the scope of the defendant's criminal operation. The challenge for investigators was locating Michael. His sophisticated identity management meant that he could disappear into any one of his fake personas at any time. He had multiple driver's licenses, social security numbers, and credit cards under different names. But Michael had made one crucial mistake: his arrogance. In June 2022, while investigators were closing in, Michael was still actively recruiting new victims on dating websites. He had no idea that his network of wives had discovered each other and were working with federal authorities. Rebecca and Jennifer, working with FBI agents, developed a plan to capture Michael during one of his fake CIA meetings. They knew he was scheduled to return to Denver for what he had told Rebecca was a high-level briefing with agency directors. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning outside a Starbucks in downtown Denver, where Michael thought he was meeting with a CIA contact who needed to brief him on a new mission. Instead, he found himself surrounded by FBI agents who had been monitoring his every move for weeks. The look of shock on Michael's face when he realized his carefully constructed world had collapsed was captured on surveillance footage that would later be used in court. For the first time in over a decade, Michael Thompson, whose real name turned out to be William Allen Morrison, was forced to confront the truth about his actions. The trial of William Allen Morrison began in February 2023 and lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution presented evidence of a criminal enterprise that had operated across 7 states and involved fraud totaling over $500,000, bigamy charges involving 5 separate marriages, and identity theft affecting dozens of people. But the most powerful testimony came from Morrison's victims themselves. Rebecca took the stand first, describing how Morrison had stolen not just her money, but 10 years of her life. He didn't just lie about his job, she told the jury. He lied about everything: his name, his family, his past, his feelings. Every kiss, every I love you, every promise about our future was part of an elaborate performance designed to steal from me. Jennifer's testimony revealed the extent of Morrison's manipulation skills. She described how he had convinced her to take out loans against her house to fund his fake CIA operations, leaving her facing foreclosure when the truth came out. One by one, Morrison's other victims testified about the financial and emotional devastation he had caused. Amanda from Florida described maxing out credit cards to help fund what she thought were humanitarian missions. Nicole from Texas explained how she had depleted her retirement savings to support Morrison's fake government work. But perhaps the most devastating testimony came from Morrison's children. Several of his older children, now adults, testified about the psychological impact of discovering that their father had been living multiple lives. One daughter described feeling like her entire childhood had been a lie, unsure which memories were real and which were part of her father's performance. Morrison's defense attorney argued that his client was suffering from psychological disorders that compelled him to create elaborate fantasies. They claimed he genuinely believed his own lies and wasn't intentionally trying to defraud anyone. The jury didn't buy it. After deliberating for less than 6 hours, they returned guilty verdicts on all counts: 5 counts of bigamy, 12 counts of wire fraud, 8 counts of mail fraud, and 15 counts of identity theft. Judge Patricia Williams sentenced Morrison to 25 years in federal prison, calling his crimes a calculated and predatory scheme that destroyed the lives of numerous victims and their children. The conviction of William Allen Morrison made national headlines, but for his victims, the real work was just beginning. The psychological and financial recovery from his decade-long deception would take years. Rebecca, Jennifer, and the other victims formed a support network that continues to this day. They worked with financial advisors to rebuild their credit, therapists to process the emotional trauma, and legal advocates to ensure Morrison couldn't profit from his crimes through book deals or media appearances. The children affected by Morrison's crimes faced unique challenges. Many required therapy to understand that their father's love for them was real, even if everything else about him was a lie. Support groups were established to help them process their feelings and maintain relationships with their half-siblings. From a legal perspective, the case led to changes in how dating websites verify user identities and how financial institutions flag suspicious wire transfers. Several states also strengthened their bigamy laws to include longer sentences for repeat offenders. But perhaps the most important outcome was the creation of the Morrison Victims Network, a website and support system designed to help other victims of similar crimes. The site provides resources for recognizing manipulation tactics, documenting evidence, and connecting with law enforcement. Rebecca, who now works as an advocate for fraud victims, estimates that she and the other victims have helped identify at least 12 additional cases of similar crimes across the United States. "We turned our trauma into a mission," she says. "If sharing our story prevents even one other woman from going through this, then something good came from our nightmare." William Allen Morrison is currently serving his 25-year sentence at a federal correctional institution in Colorado. He will be eligible for parole in 2041, when he'll be 67 years old. But here's what should concern everyone. Morrison's case isn't unique. Federal investigators estimate that there are potentially hundreds of similar cases operating across the United States at any given time. The rise of online dating and social media has made it easier than ever for skilled manipulators to create fake identities and target vulnerable victims. Recent studies suggest that romance fraud costs Americans over $300 million annually, with cases like Morrison's representing some of the most sophisticated and damaging examples of this type of crime. What makes Morrison's case particularly alarming is how long he was able to operate without detection. For over a decade, he successfully maintained multiple identities, relationships, and financial schemes without any of his victims becoming suspicious enough to investigate. The warning signs were there: the secretive job, the frequent travel, the requests for money, the reluctance to discuss his past. But Morrison was skilled at providing just enough documentation and explanation to make his lies believable. So here's my question for you. How well do you really know your partner? Have you ever verified their employment, checked their financial records, or questioned stories that seemed too extraordinary to be true? I'm not suggesting you become paranoid or distrustful of everyone you meet. But Rebecca's story teaches us that healthy skepticism and basic verification of important claims can protect us from devastating betrayal. What red flags would you watch for in a relationship? Have you ever encountered someone whose stories didn't quite add up? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience might help protect someone else from becoming the next victim. If this case shocked you, wait until you see next week's story about an online dating scammer who convinced 12 different women to sell their houses and move across the country for a man who didn't exist. It's a reminder that in our digital age, the person you think you know best might be the one you should fear most. Sometimes the person you trust most is the one you should fear the most. And as Morrison's victims learned, the perfect marriage can sometimes be the perfect lie. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on cases like this one. Share this video to help others recognize these warning signs, because the next victim could be someone you love.